Morning, everybody. We're doing something new today. And not by, not literally. We're going to be doing the same thing that we always do. It's just that I'm going to be talking way more, if that's possible. I have been thinking about the format of how I do these streams. And that includes, I've been looking at other people's streams. You know, we've been rating people at the end of every stream, trying out different, and looking at what they do. And I'm like, damn, these people have all been on Twitch way longer than me, and they, understand what this thing is better than I do. Natsuma Z, welcome. First time chatter. And so I've been thinking about, the way that they organize everything and the way that they do their, oh, you just finished the one from Friday. Welcome back, Kim. I was thinking about, we have this thing where we've been doing, the voice chat. And I really enjoy having the community to chat with while I'm working. But I also understand it's, not standard. Most people don't have their chat, voice chatting and going on about random stuff. And I really like that. But I want to experiment with doing it the way that is traditional here on twitch.tv, which is that the person streaming is the one talking the whole time. I'm worried that people might come here and then they feel like they are, they're expecting to hear Pete Mohrbacher talk about art, and instead they're getting something different. And it's a bit of a grab bag every week, which... again, I like, but maybe not what is best for the channel growth. So I'm going to give a shot at this and see what it's like with me doing all the talking and then reading chat, which would be definitely a new thing. So we have the room open, the live on Twitch room here on the Huckleberry Discord. Every time I say it, I'm going to hit this button. And, people can come in, but by default, permissions are, speaking's turned off. And so if there's specific conversation we're going to have, a guest that's going to come on, whatever, I'll bring him on. We can chit-chat. I love having conversations while I'm painting. But it's going to be, mostly me talking, which is, I think, probably fine. I think that's what most people are coming here for. I think part of the reason why I've, kind of resisted it up until now is because the idea that people are coming anywhere to hear me talking is always a little strange to me. I think, everyone wants to listen to this nasal guy give his input on literally everything that's happening on the screen. But, I think that's the game we're playing. So I'm going to give it a shot and see how it goes. And if we want to, I'll flip it back next week. Yeah, your new breakfast routine. It's what is it? This part of a balanced breakfast. Pete Mohrbacher is part of a balanced breakfast. It's me and the Lucky Charms together form true health and wisdom. So this weekend I did a little. I went to go take time off because I discovered that when your time off involves playing Armored Core, a lot of Armored Core, it's really hard on the wrists, the hands, the fingers, and the wrists. And so between the amount of extra painting that I've been doing and the amount of extra MTs I've been fucking blasting, my hand started to hurt for the first time in a really long time. And so but I got bored and I ended up doing studies this weekend anyway. Yeah, I'm planning on restocking playmats into my store. I submitted an order to restock, I think 6 months ago. And the supplier that I go through, they were having problems getting blanks in from China. And they were like, man, this is taking forever. If you want to go with another company, just go for it. But I didn't have a backup company, and playmats are not the main thing that I make my money on every day. So I was like, I'll just wait. I'll just wait it out. And so they said October. So it should be maybe in a month or so, I'll get a restock on a lot of my popular playmats. That'd be cool. Yeah, so I was I'm actually trying to read chat now too. I got really bored this weekend, and I decided to go ahead and do some studies and do them offline, away from chat. For the first time, I've done, at this point, 64 studies, and at least 60 of them have been hanging out with chat. And so this was a bold new direction for me to do chatless studies. And they were immediately the best studies I'd ever done. So I thought it was really fun I just felt like I was just having a blast working on them. I felt like I was able to push at like my full strength for the first time in a really long time. I just felt like all the things that I've spent the last couple of months learning, I got to actually practice them. And I it only took me 90 minutes to get where I wanted to go with the studies. And I felt like really, really capable working without having to talk at the same time and without like having to look over at chat, which I'm going to be doing a lot today. Is it art if it isn't done with a glaze of social media? What would the old master say? Michelangelo respected the algorithm. Yeah, I mean, the only reason we've ever heard of Michelangelo or Leonardo is because those guys respected the algorithm of their day, 100%. I agree. But yeah, so I had this like epiphany moment this weekend where I was like, damn, I actually am getting a lot better at the stuff that I've been studying. And it feels really good. I feel like I hit a level up, and it's just a full-on, like, blasted up into the new, like, level range. And it just felt awesome. And I credit a lot of that to, like, just taking a moment to concentrate and do it for the sake of doing it. It got me back to, like, the best mindset possible for making art. And, yeah, and it's, like, it re-energized me to want to, like, make sure that I was doing these studies all the time, that I was keeping back up with it, because I know that there's tiers of leveling up past where I'm at right now that I'm looking forward to now that I feel like I've really been making progress. And a couple of them were like, some of it was just concentration, but some of it was also like, I've done a lot of little experiments over the course of doing these things. And there was like a couple of them that just really panned out. And so I'm going to go over those today and show you what experiments that I've been doing for myself that have ultimately panned out into like what has turned out to be the method that is working the most for me. Like some of it has been going back to like older habits, revisiting older habits now with new information. And some of it is like new, like reusing tools in new ways that I wasn't doing before. Control T. There we go. So I definitely I'm liking going through a little bit of a no-tan first to get the basic layout. I'm not sticking really close to like the literal like grid-like layout of everything, but I used to do this thing where I go back and forth and do this and check to make sure that like my drawing was lined up with the thing by looking at the navigator and seeing it flip back and forth and checking it that way. But once I got to the point where I felt like I was actually able to do it pretty predictably and I didn't need that flipping back and forth in order to feel like I was like not making weird, fucked up looking mutants, I felt like I was comfortable just like not checking it anymore. And instead, like just really looking at my own drawing and determining whether or not I felt like things looked right. And that unlocked the ability for me to feel like I was doing the studies more in my own style, which feels really good. The point of this is not for me to be a copy machine. The point of this is for me to be able to like get better at my fundamental art skills. And so this has to be something I can carry over into my own style and replicate in my own images. And I feel like I'm getting that more now by like respecting the differences between the image and the final art. I'm like getting this sense of like how I think the image looks as opposed to like how it like literally is. And that was something I was aspiring to for a while, and now I feel like I'm comfortable at that spot. And so I'm perfectly fine just like not checking it anymore. But I'm also not trying to really push too hard on the stylization at the same time. So once I get like feeling like the overall structure of it is pretty good, push this hair back a little bit off the forehead. So I'd like to see that the curve of the eyebrow going over there. I feel like the ears finally far back enough. He's got this long kind of well-defined jaw, getting all that in there. I think we need to make sure that the structure of the shoulder doesn't kind of get crunched by missing like where it pinches here in the armpit. But really make sure that like we've got this triangle here of like the collarbone, and then this, and then this. This is kind of forming a triangle here that I want to like be roomy enough to really feel like we're getting real anatomy there. And then he's turning his body a little bit. He's like tucking his arm under him, but his body's actually turned this way a little bit, it looks like. So a little bit of notan and a little bit of like construction lines together to sort of give myself like a clear foundation to build off of. And I'm going to shrink the whole thing a little bit because I think my canvas is a little more narrow. And I think I want to see a little bit more of this left shoulder to be able to like get the sense we can see the full width of the chest here. Because that, I think, actually does a decent amount in terms of showing the pose of the overall body twist. And then this shoulder is probably going to drop some as a result of that. Actually, a serious question. It's wild to hear leveling up at this point in your career, given I look up to you as your art as virtuosic. What do you think the studies have been offering you recently that working on projects in and of itself was not offering? For example, does it develop like a sense of design, improve mark making, etc.? So it's like, I think that there's some of it has just come down to like confidence of anatomy. Like the last piece I was doing involved like a humanoid figure with a very expressive face. And I haven't been painting a lot of faces in my mainline work for a while. So getting practice where I was studying more faces and it was just more normal, more standard, more accepted for me to like be doing faces like on a regular basis meant like I felt like I was able to perform at a slightly higher level as a result of just having an additional comfort with the subject matter. Like, the other thing it's doing for me is, like, I am using this as a test bed for a lot of my process experiments. So, like, okay, well, how do it's like part of it is like, okay, so where do all the facial features line up? And, like, what is the overall structure of the head and the body? Like, that sort of stuff comes up a lot. But then also, how do I go about building up a complex figure? Like, where do I start and, like, how do I get to the final? Because you can always, if you spend enough time stumbling, eventually you'll always get there. But to be able to do it in an efficient way that makes you feel like you know where everything is, like, it requires, like, you to have, like, before you even start, like, an understanding of, like, your process on, like, how do you build everything up and how do you get there? And like experimenting on that when you're only doing one painting a month is really tedious. But experimenting on that when you're doing one painting every day, you can it's not just that you like level up on it 30 times faster. It's that like there's a certain amount of defensiveness that gets built in when you're only producing one painting every 30 days. And I no longer feel kind of defensive about trying out new things. Like you've seen, my number of brushes is tiny. It's actually the number of brushes I have on my palette right now are double what they were 60 days ago, because I've been experimenting with stuff and have been trying things out in a way that doesn't feel like, okay, well, is this piece going to reinvent the way that I work? Am I going to try something out that I'm going to regret later? Like, I feel like comfortable in doing that in a way that I haven't felt in a really long time. And that has made a huge difference as far as my ability to learn and grow quickly. Because like there's no point where you just like top off and level out in art. Like you only top off at the point where you stop choosing to experiment and choosing to learn. And I had definitely gotten to a point where I was choosing to learn less and I was experimenting less. And it made me feel a little anxious, but also I felt like, hey, the money keeps coming in and people keep respecting my work. So, it's not going too bad. But I like, messing with that is nerve-wracking, and I didn't want to mess with it. And now, like, I have a vehicle for messing with it. And I love having a vehicle for messing around and, like, experimenting and being, like, less picky about stuff and, like, opening up to making mistakes. That's felt awesome. It's brought back my love of just sitting around down and making art. Like, when I'm working on projects, it can be stressful, and it can be, it can make me the stress and the anxiety of it can make me not want to sit down and paint. But then, like, to do a study and to like be able to freely screw things up and just like start and finish something in a single sitting has made me want to sit down and paint at times where I don't need to, which is like, that's kind of new for me. It's not new. It's like, it's a return to form. Yeah, one of Natsuma Z is saying one of my New Year's resolutions is to actually make more mistakes. Yeah, it's like choosing to make bad art and choosing to make mistakes is like really, really valuable. And when we get to a point where we feel like we're doing important work and we can't afford to make mistakes, we put ourselves in a defensive position that makes it harder to grow and learn, which sometimes is not, excuse me, just had breakfast. Sometimes it's like necessary, but it's also not where we want to be all the time. Do you have any tips for improving your studies, like more geometric shapes or something else? I think one of the big things about studies is like they have to be done in a context along with doing imaginative work, because like there's something about like studies where you can start to just turn it into a system where you learn how to create stylized image, like you become good at becoming a stylized copy machine, and then it's like that's not the point of doing the studies. Like the point is to get to a point where you can feel like your understanding of things like lighting, perspective, anatomy all get better so that you can implement it into your own creations and do it with some level of imagination. So yeah, Dustin he was showing me this morning that he was doing some very beginning geometric studies, and he was saying how he was hanging out with some buds and he was sitting around thinking about how he wanted to get back to making some art. And I was like, hell yeah, man. That's how it goes. Like, we're not in this because it's like an amazing like financial prospect. It's not like, you know what? I bet there's a lot of money if I get good at art. And it's a really great move for me that's going to change everything in my life for the better. It's like, it's just really fun and it feels really good. And it's fun to do it along with people too. And it's like, it's a super challenging skill, but it also like the challenge of it becomes a big part of why it's so satisfying. And even just like, even if you're not amazing at it, it just feels really good to just sit down and like push paint around and push colors around and be like in command of the canvas. It feels awesome. So I keep wanting to do it now, even during my days off. Now that I have like a vehicle for having more fun with it. I find that the more fun I'm having with it, like the better it comes out also, which is this really virtuous cycle. Didn't realize it's the church today. That's the gospel truth. Hell yeah. I'm going to fucking preach from the hilltops. Yeah, Summer Dragoness, I hope you feel better. I hope everything goes well with doctor's appointment and that you can like get back to feeling like you could do the things that you care about. It's tough. I know everyone, a lot of people put a lot of pressure on themselves to make sure that they're always being like a productive person and like making great work and, you know, making great strides all the time. But there are so many things that hold us back that you just need to be like, that are not like our fault or our response, but like something like a medical issue is the sort of thing like, you know, it affects so many people. And, just try not to beat yourself up over the fact that you're not able to make art because of medical reasons. Like that's a pretty good reason not to be able to do it. All right. So I'm gonna do this step first. Okay. So one of the things I've been doing is like, okay, so I get to this step, right? And it's like I can see already a bunch of stuff that I want to fix. And it's really obvious where there's some value blocks that I can put in. Like, I think one of the darkest spaces here is like, this cast shadow under the shoulder here, right? And so what I was doing before was I was doing something like this, where I was blocking in these like harder, solid blocks. I was also playing around with like doing more sort of geometric like reductions of the figure to try to lay it out like low poly. The thing I've been doing recently that has absolutely busted things open for me is using the soft brush for one of the first times in a long time. I typically tell people not to use a soft brush. Like for many years, I've said soft brush is one of the most dangerous tools in the toolbox because it's something that people overuse to try to render. And since we're like in learning mode here, I want to do a really quick demo as to like why. So we end up with a situation where like we're trying to render out a chunk of something. We've got, it's like, we're gonna lock it here. Say like, it's darker on one side and it's lighter on the other. And we wanna like kind of blend everything together. People will often first reach for the soft brush because the hard edge brush, when you have it up at 100% opacity, it becomes really hard to like make things look blended when it creates these like really hard edges here. And so the impulse is to start softening it and softening it and softening it until you end up with this airbrush, the soft airbrush. And so people do this and they do this to try to blend. But the problem with it is that like as you get enough of that soft gradient at the brush to try to like overlap everything to get it so that it looks smooth, you've got these really big soft brush marks. And it looks okay if it's like in an isolated area, like a little strip like this. But like when you are working over a larger chunk of canvas, it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to paint something with a spray can, but it's really hard to get an even coat. You can see here how it's like, you can see in the navigator more so than like on the surface. When you try to level it out, it's always kind of spotty in ways that are hard to tell when you look up close. And you can only kind of see the spottiness when it's far away. And you end up with this like uneven, gross kind of spotty finish. And it's It's awful. And like I see this all the time in beginner painting where they use the soft brush and it creates this like uneven, splotchy kind of finish over everything. So I'm like, don't use the soft brush. Like, learn how to use a harder edge brush and then be careful about where you're placing all your edges. You know, learn how to blend your edges using a harder edge brush, turn the flow down. That's the key. So, but then I was having this talk with Neil Jazzmatazz about, gradients. You know, what's typically happening in a lot of images is there's like a gradient that kind of goes across it over very long forms. And in this case, I'm looking at this guy and there's like he's got all of these freckles, but also all these kind of cast shadows. And you can see that he's kind of like the light is pointed at his chest and it's like brighter at the chest and it's kind of like darker towards the top of his head. There's this like soft gradient that it kind of runs top to bottom across the whole length. And so I can go through and try to break down all these little edges in here because this is the stuff that's standing out. All the high contrast stuff is happening in here. So, but what I've been doing instead of like going in and trying to find where all the highest contrast bits are at the beginning when I start adding values is instead I'm looking at the broadest, largest shapes first and the largest transitions of value first. And I'm blocking those in using a soft brush, using the airbrush instead. And so you can see it's really fast and really easy to create these really soft gradients that can run like the whole length of a figure. And I don't really care if it's a little splotchy because like I'm going to be going over this anyway. This is an intermediary step leading me to where I want to go. And so if I look at like the neck, the cylinder of the neck here, I can find, where's the center of the highlight going down the middle there? And then it's a little darker over here, a little darker over here. And so I can kind of find where the center of that highlight is using this soft brush as a beginning step to be able to like build out these sort of larger, softer transitions before I get into all the fine, high contrast detail. And that seems like a really obvious thing, but I don't watch a lot of tutorials, so I'm not sure if anybody is explicitly teaching this. And this is definitely not what my intermediate steps look like when I'm typically painting, is like there's this soft brushy stage where there's like these really, really soft transitions, going over long distances. Everything looks incredibly blurry and out of focus. It looks kind of fucked up, actually. But I've been starting here, and it's what I felt. The reason why I like doing it is because it feels like now in order to build in, when I start cutting in finer detail with my harder edge brush, I don't watch a lot of tutorials. P. Mohrbacher is not me. Okay, well, that's the thing. Maybe I should stop saying that big. I could relate to people better. Because everybody seems to love tutorials, and I'm like, Mister, I don't watch tutorials unless I'm being paid. Or like, if I'm financially incentivized, like, I should learn how to do tutorials. Like, now I'm watching them. Well, see, I'll keep an eye out for it. But like, this kind of like overly soft, like blown out look is never been a step along the way for me to finish a painting before. But I've started doing it the last few times, and the results for me have been really good. Because now when I go to start cutting in finer edges, the finer edges are being cut in to values that are already broadly transitioning across these really long distances. So it's like, it's coming closer to where it needs to be at the final sooner with fewer steps. And it's giving me like a greater amount of confidence early on. See, I decided I was going to do it at this point because you can see how the gradient is actually emerging out from the figure and making a blurry halo around the figure a little bit even. I'm going to do the thing where I paint in the rough background like I was doing earlier. And it's like it meshes perfectly with these steps because it's going to end up cutting in that harder edge. So I don't actually need to erase. I can like get to where I've got like flats put in. Then I can hit it with like a little bit of airbrush to give it a little bit of loose volume and like really rough values. Then I can go and cut in the silhouette. And I don't need to like go back and erase or redo anything, which is, I always want to work in a way where I get to put things down once instead of having to keep going back and forth, doing them over and over again. Yeah, like the idea of forgetting about the details at the beginning and like just letting it be about these broader, looser strokes. I mean, this is like everyone's heard working like big to small. You know, like it's a super, super common thing. This is not me revolutionizing how to paint. Like working big to small is the understood way that a lot of people make art. And this is just like working blurry to, focused almost. But with like me really focusing on the bigger shapes and then cutting them down bit by bit as I get tighter in. And I really think that this has been really good for me personally. But okay, I have so many things. I'm like, they're struggling to get out the door of my mouth. Dustin and I were looking at his studies today, and I was pointing out this idea that like artists don't actually see an image that they're studying as one image. It's actually a series of layers that we're kind of like mentally filtering through and sifting apart and kind of teasing apart as we like look at different aspects of the image, whether it's like the values, the surface details, figuring out the direction of the lighting, all that stuff. It ends up being like these discrete kind of like analysis that we do as we're looking through it all. And now like I'm realizing that this kind of like broad look at all these transitions, this is something I would always do late in the process. I would always look at things from this perspective, but I was doing it as like one of the last steps is I was looking to kind of take all of the details I'd added in and then build larger gradations across the form. And like I was having to kind of glaze over my details carefully in order to pull that off. But this like, it feels like this is the sensible way of doing it. It's not the way that the image actually looks, but it is a layer of the image. It's a visual layer of the image that is easy to understand. And to understand Peter, I am a tryhard, haha. Can't wait for the subtitles in stream, but I managed to grasp the main. He articulates well and the microphone is good, so it helps. Yeah, we talked about adding subtitles, Dustin. I don't remember what happened with that. And then, hey, Peacock, good to see you around. Starting loose makes me nervous because I fear I don't actually understand what I'm drawing until it's too late. Yeah, it's almost like you're like, okay, well, this is the thing I'm seeing right now. This is the first thing I'm seeing. So I'm just like, I want to go there because it feels safe. Like this never occurred to me early on because I was like, this doesn't feel like safety. It certainly doesn't feel like a good image. It doesn't feel like something I want to show anyone. I want to show people the cool part. But this isn't the cool part. But this is the part that I like noticed that everyone was missing. And like when I started focusing on it for myself, I realized I was kind of missing it to a degree too. And so like one of the things that I can do to stylize this image earlier on is now that I have this laid out, if I wanted to exaggerate the way that the values kind of gradate from top to bottom, I can build in some of that lighting here. And with like 2 brush strokes, I can get this like greater sense of like, focusing the lighting. I could do this kind of like, more focused, more limited lighting, like tightening the cone of that spotlight right at the beginning of the process and like get to see a little bit about how the drama of the lighting is coming together before I get to the point where I'm doing all the details. And it's like, now that I've got this laid out, I feel like, oh, I am eating good. I'm like ready to go in and start. I'm ready to go in and start like getting to the part that's like fun that I'm looking forward to, where I start to slice up the shapes a little bit to be able to make these like larger blocks. But I'm extra hungry for it now because as you can see, since I already have these soft, creamy transitions in place, I only need to make a couple of strokes and I can make these like really precise, very readable like cuts that like get really smooth really quickly, even with my like standard hard circle brush. And so like I'm getting to a point where I want the painting to look a certain way, like before I'm even like way earlier in the process, before I was used to being there, which is so fun. Have you ever tried starting with shapes and values, value blocks, but with color dynamic brush. Oh, I haven't. I've gotten some good recommendations for some like weird color dynamic brushes, and I really need to try it out. Kim's like, if soft brush has been the answer all along, I'm gonna be so mad. I know, it's like I have had an agenda against the soft brush for so much of my art career. Actually, I'm gonna take this away. I'm gonna come back to this because I want to do the thing I was saying before that I like to do, where I cut it in the silhouette. So how do you make gradients with a hard brush? Okay, I'm gonna do this demo. I'm probably gonna do this demo a million times. So any OGs here, if you like really are sick of this demo, please just shout at me and I will stop doing it so much. Don't tell anyone I used the soft brush on my last piece, afraid that the art police would come punch me in the face. Yeah, I think like a lot of painters who like think about like really painterly styles, they like have a similar agenda against the soft brush. The soft brush, they just see it being misused so often. All right. A lot of Chinese artists do it, so I'm pretty amazed to start with the colors basically have an automatic color palette. Yeah, I've been seeing stuff like that. I need to give that a try. But also like the thing where I'm using the soft brush, we were watching this one Chinese artist do like these hyper detailed piece, and it was all lasso and soft brush. And I was thinking like, that's kind of interesting. I wonder if maybe I'm not using lasso enough, maybe I'm not using soft brush enough. Anyways, so I've got my hard edge brush here. This is in the brush pack that I have up on huckleberry.art. If you want to go to huckleberry.art, I've got some free downloads over there, including my basic brush pack that's got this one in it. This is literally just a round brush with the size jitter on. So my pen pressure is controlling the size. And then the opacity is set to 80% and the flow is set to 10%. So the secret here is this is 100% flow and this is 10% flow. That means that like a really low flow, I'm going to turn it down even lower, I'm going to turn it down to 5%. You can see that the stroke, as it's kind of coming in, needs to overlap itself over and over and over again. Each of these little stamps that make up the stroke, if we look at micro scale, you can see the stroke is actually made up of these little tiny stamps. And when you turn the flow down, it means that within a single brush stroke, more stamps need to build up to reach its target opacity. Which, I mean, who cares, right? Whoa, Windows is like losing its mind at this information. Okay, who cares? Well, I care because when I make a stroke, you can see that the beginning and end of the stroke are soft and the edges of it are hard, which means that if I want to make a soft edge, I just scrub side to side. And when I want to make a hard edge, I carve up and down. And I don't need to be able to like use a soft brush to be able, I don't need to use a soft edge brush to be able to do that, because if I turn my opacity down a little bit and I brush in the direction that I want things to be soft, I get a little bit of naturally soft edge, and it follows the direction of my hand, which gives me a nice gestural stroke. Like there's this little bit of like crunchiness that you get from something that's handmade, and it's like following the natural motions of my hand, which is like what we want. We want something that feels like beautifully handcrafted, and we want it to like match like this like natural like motion of our hand. So that is possible without having to do anything. It works on every tablet. It works on every software, and it's like dead easy to set up. You just need to find out whatever the flow is or flow equivalent and turn it down on a simple soft brush, and that's all it takes. Anyways, so I was going to cut in the silhouette a little bit here. I like my sponge brush, cut it in a silhouette. I think we need to pick a background color for this guy. My default has just been to go gold over and over again. I'm doing a little Tim Van Ruden, little Timothy behavior.
Yo, Pete. So how have you been applying soft brush along with your hard brush?
How do I apply them along with them?
Yeah, because I'm looking at it. It looks like you did a lot of soft brushing to
Yeah,
start off here.
it's
and
all
then-
soft brush right now.
Okay. So do you just do that to get your base forms or your values?
Yeah, the goal is to get it so that it looks like just a blurry, out of focus version of it early, because then all of these softer transitions are already in there, and then all I need to do is get in there and cut in the harder ones, and I'm like closer to a finally rendered thing, at less brush strokes, less time. and less fuss.
You know who has a similar style to this? Christopher Young actually does something very similar to this, where he starts off with like a softer brush to just develop like those soft transitional values, and then I think he swaps over to his harder brush.
Yeah, I really don't think I'm innovating that hard here. This is innovation for me, for someone who's maybe not been curious enough about other people's work processes. And I just like, I'm excited to share because I feel like I've gotten something fresh for myself. And I know a lot of people here are like, everyone's kind of got their own like way of working that they're already comfortable with. And, like, I'm excited to share that I've actually learned something that I'm like maybe going to be using a lot in my own process here. So this isn't necessarily like the right way for everyone to do it, but for these photo studies, I feel like this has been a part of my level up with doing the studies, is by like getting to this phase faster. And then it meshes really well with this thing that I've done already, where I like to cut in the silhouette as like a layer on top of everything to get that like little bit of extra crunch on the edges of the silhouette and a little bit of natural texture in the background. I like it better than a fully flat thing. And then there's something about manually cutting the silhouette that makes me consider the silhouette a little bit more. So I make these little corrections whenever I do it. No one's ever come back to me and said, damn, that thing where you cut in the silhouette on an upper layer, that's really great. I'm using that all the time now. Honestly, I don't think anyone should do this. I think everyone who's like tried it so far has thought like, this is dumb and no one should do this. And I'm like, you're right. And Alejandro, thanks for the question, but also we're trying something new today where I am the only one allowed to talk in this room unless we're bringing somebody on to have a specific conversation. But that was exactly the kind of conversation I'm hoping to have more of, like good solid voice chat questions. So don't freak out if you suddenly can't talk on here, but like if anybody, if there's some conversation that we want to like dig deeper on, feel free to like flag me or Dustin and we can add a voice chat role so you can come on and talk. We're gonna try to do it this way. Oh, also, I think I forgot earlier, Caribou Avide, thank you so much for the Prime sub. We got a big rush of Prime subs after Friday when we had like the person who won what was their name again? They had a cool name. I saw them around. The Meowzeri, was saving up for a tablet and got a free one as part of our giveaway, which is exactly what we want with the giveaways, is for somebody who to help them get into art by just giving them the hardware. And so we are currently we've been giving away free stuff every single Friday for part of the community days, and we're gonna keep doing that. And then the encouragement of knowing that me spending $50 a week on giving away tablets is actually going to places where they're appreciated has been motivating for us to want to keep doing it. That's kind of where all of the sub money has been going. It's not a ton of sub money, but it's going towards funding the sort of larger community things that we're doing. Being able to do Friday giveaways and stuff. This is not turning into profit for me and Dustin. It's really just turning into us trying to make a better community space and give away free stuff to artists who are just starting off. And the more of that we can do, the better. I think everyone kind of can agree that that's awesome to be able to do. So if you Twitch is going to take half the subs, and then the other half we're going to funnel back in over here. So if you've got Prime and it's free to do, go ahead and Prime sub. Thank you so much for Vanilla Ja. I appreciate the Prime sub. Yeah, we're gonna keep going with these giveaways because I really like the idea of being able to can get tablets in people's hands. Dustin is now trying this out too. I think everybody who hasn't tried digital art before should give it a shot. All right. So the question is where do we want to dig in next? There's I would love to be able to clean up some of this crust. We got a little too much crust around the edges on this. I would love to sort of get in and do more of the features on the face and neck, because this is really where all the juicy bits are. So maybe we'll Maybe we'll zoom in. I like to start with supporting elements first in a lot of cases because like I feel like it's important for me to eat my vegetables whenever I'm like working on a painting so that I don't like spend all my time overworking the thing that is like most exciting to me and then forget about all of the supporting stuff. So I tend to try to sort of spiral around and do all of the supporting material first before I get into like the core. But I don't know, who cares? I want to at least add a little bit of volume onto the hair. This is one of the other big level up things I've been doing is like instead of treating, I was at first in my early studies, like I can pull this up. This is a little embarrassing, which is why I should probably show it. Unlike my first one here, if you zoom in, you can see like all the hair is just like straw because I'm like going in and trying to do the individual hair strands right at the beginning. And what I've been doing instead is on the more recent ones, here's the same one from this weekend, the same photo set from this weekend. You can see how I'm starting off with these looser, softer, more out of focus shapes and then cutting in some smaller detail. It just, as a supporting element, it looks so much better being in softer focus. And so like staying soft, staying blurry early, and then going in for those fine grained details at the end, oh, this looks so much better in the study. So like, I don't know if that's something I'm going to really dig in on and get as being like a standard practice for my future imaginative work. But I'm going to give it a shot because I've really loved the feeling of like having everything feel just like a little bit more like soft and painterly, especially early on. Because I can always go in and cut more detail later. It's that process of like, there's something about like just going, you know what, this looks really good, and just leaving it alone and like letting it be a little blurry, a little out of focus instead of overworking every inch of it. That has been like, it feels like a return to form. It feels like a return to like back when I was studying art originally and I wasn't so caught up in the details on everything. And it creates a look that I like for my own work. So it's been really satisfying to be able to do that. Sam, you've been snacking a lot during the streams. Does that mean that like you watching this is actually like breaking all of your diet goals? Creaminess, crunchiness, crustiness. Yeah, it's like all of my brushes are all like soft, inky, splatter, sponge, scrapey, smudgy, fuzzy. Like they're all kind of like abstract textural feelings rather than like, because it's like the specific description of what they are isn't really that important to me. It's like everything in art is like a vibe. And so like the vibiness of it is important to me all the time. Because like the vibe is the only thing that people really catch on to with art. Like the specifics of it are just for like the super nerds. But the vibiness of it, that's what like everyone gets into when it comes to art. So like understanding sort of what produces those vibes feels like the, you know, power as an artist. You're on a bulk now, so you don't have diet goals, just calories and gains. Hell yeah, dude. Sounds good. Yours are all named after trees and flowers. I saw that and I thought it was awesome branding. I have to say, Kim, I saw that like all your different brush packs were all named after like different plants, and I was like, damn, that's a good idea. I think I made a note, actually. I thought it was so good I wrote it down. God, I love calories. I'm not dieting for real right now. I'm just I do a little bit of like I don't eat until like my breakfast is usually pretty late, like around 11. And then I don't snack after dinner. So after like around 7 o'clock, which is technically intermittent fasting, but it really just feels like not eating shit in the middle of the night, like not going to the pantry at midnight isn't really a diet, but technically these days it is. It's got a name and everything. And when I can commit to doing that regularly, my relationship with food is a lot better. So pretty happy about how things have been going. I've been on a really good tear health wise for the last couple of months, ever since I got back from vacation. I went away on vacation, and I was away for 3 weeks, and I didn't diet, I didn't exercise, I didn't worry about any little details in my life. And then I was like doing those things. I was like trying to be healthy before I left. And my big innovation, my big thing I did is that when I got back from vacation, I just got back into good habits immediately, day one. And I realized that if I could do that every time, that like I can just decide I'm going to go back to good habits and get into it. I have a lot of control over my life, and that feels awesome. Like to be able to break a habit and then remake it at will feels like a superpower. So that's what I've been advising people who like want to learn art to do the same thing, is to like commit to having to do daily studies, but like don't get fussed about if you're doing it every day. The thing that you need to concentrate on is that if you ever break a daily habit, that like more so than keeping daily habits running and keeping like a good, like, what do you call it? Like a chain going, like a streak. Instead of worrying about your streak and breaking your streak, you should worry about the day after you break the streak, that getting back on it is like the real test. That's like one real rep. Like eating healthy or like doing art study or whatever doesn't matter. It's like the day after you stop doing it, choosing to get back on it and do it again, and being able to do that whenever you want to, that's where all of the real stuff comes from. That's like that resilience to be able to get back to a habit. That's like the real test, and like can be because it's the thing that gets you doing it. Like when I stopped paying attention to what I was eating, I was like, oh, I'm just going to do this for a few months because I need to concentrate. Or I'll just do this for a few weeks because I need to concentrate because I'm really busy right now. And then it was like 3 years I didn't get back to it. And I gained like 40 pounds over that time. Just like pound by pound, bit by bit, just like eating bad, not taking care of myself. And I realized that it wasn't about trying to like do anything perfect. It was about like being able to get back to like the point that I cared about, being able to rebuild habits, choose to do them again when I cared. And like the same thing happened with art. Like at first I was doing them daily. These studies were daily. And then there was one day where I was just like, damn, I can't be bothered. Like I just don't feel like it. And then the next day I came back and I said, I don't care that I broke this habit. I'm getting back to it. So there have been days like on the week, I've just decided sometimes the weekend I don't do dailies. Some weekends I do dailies. Most days I have done them. I don't know exactly how long I've been doing them because I've broken the streak multiple times and I've gotten back on it multiple times. And the result of it has been me like getting a lot of them done. And it hasn't required a lot of willpower any given day to do it. It's been great. Sam's saying that his first fitness degree was in nutritional science and had a 80-20 rule. 80% whole healthy foods, 20% generally whatever you want. Worked for me. Yeah, some people, they need like tons and tons of structure. You guys just made me hungry and I got a snack. It's fine. You can eat snacks. It is midnight, so basically optimal snack time. Oh, hell yeah. Yeah, I that's the time when I get serious with myself. Like during the day or whatever, I don't really restrict anything. And then nighttime, that's when I need to like stay on my shit. To keep an eye on myself. Be my own boss a little bit. Except if I'm choosing to like, cut loose. Hanging out with friends, on vacation, whatever. But like at home with YouTube, just foraging around the pantry in the darkness. For me, not the ideal. I'm really trying to not get too tight on these details, like going in and defining the eyes and stuff. I really want to avoid it. I've had this really great like string of luck with keeping everything feeling kind of blurry and faded out, especially in the eye area, which is like a cool aesthetic. But then when I go back and I'm trying to do finishing details, they tend to kind of darken in, and like I tend to find darker colors and put them in like the key little areas anyway. And that keeps it from turning into these sort of larger blobs and bigger marks. Like by making sure that I delay gratification on like these tiny facial details, I find that I'm getting much more precise marks by like getting them in as late as possible in the process, leaving them to the very, very end. Yeah, there's something about rooting through the fridge in the dead of night that I feel is like a universal human experience. Like I feel like that is just like the story of us, of all of us at a certain point. There's always that night. It's a great deal of like, it's like in a way it feels like this sort of success of modernity where you're like, damn, back in medieval peasant times, no one ever, like, what did they do? Were the peasants able to like sneak around, like go and dig around and find Oreos in their pantry in the middle of the night? Like, no. Were they finding some like piece of like pig ear or whatever, some preserved piece of gristle or whatever to snack on at midnight? I doubt it. I don't know. Don't put the highlight into the eye unless everything else is in an advanced state. Yeah, you know, that's art advice I swear to God I heard back in art school. And I've just been like, yeah, fuck it. I don't feel like that. Like, I don't want to do that. You know, I've been too good for it for a long time to take advice from Sargent. I'm such a pest. So entitled. I don't really feel like following all the good advice I know is good advice. I'm just going to do it my way. And now that I'm like, I'm like, just about 30 days away from hitting 40. I'm like, maybe I should listen to Sargent. It's taken this long for me to start to like develop good habits. It's fine though. I'm going to be, I don't know. I'm really excited for where things go with me being like a better version of myself now. I think I could kick ass in my 40s. I think I'm going to fucking crush these 40s. Gremlin behavior. I love celebrating gremlin behavior in my friends and stuff. There's something about being a serious person all the time that I struggle with. So a little bit of shared gremlininess, I love. Maybe it's time for more. Maybe that's more traditional. For more traditional. Putting highlights in early, yeah, it's like, I don't know. It's just like there's something about the sort of practice of delayed gratification that I've been doing broadly in my work that has. I feel like my work keeps getting better as I do those kinds of things. And so that's what's been motivating me to want to do it. It's like the selfish urge to want to like work on the parts of the painting that I want that all the details first is like one selfish urge. But the other selfish urge is to like make a good ass painting. And like, I think I care more about the quality of the work in the end than I do about me like wanting immediate gratification. That like this desire for delayed gratification that's growing inside of me is like this like greed for all of these like good things that I see coming down the line. I'm just rubbing my hands together, licking my lips, thinking, oh damn, it's gonna be so awesome when I get down there. And I'm like, able to do all those cool details at the end. They're going to look so fucking sick when I finally get down to that point and like everything's all laid out and I like knock in those last couple details and it's going to look fucking cool. I've also found that like as I do things this way, every brushstroke I put in, because I have a clear sense on where it's supposed to go, I have an easier time being like careful with them. And so my brush economy has been going up as a result of like sort of delayed gratification method. Rubbing hands plus licking lips is more raccoon mode. Yeah. I mean, I do feel like I relate to the raccoon pretty strongly. Art is one of those careers that you don't age out of, you age into it. I think that sounds pretty true. That sounds exactly right to me. Like, we worry so much about like, oh my God, are all these youngsters gonna like, you know, take over all the jobs because like, you know, they're all so amazing and they're good at these younger ages. It's just like, now there's something about art that is definitely like a thing you feel like you're always growing into, no matter how old you get. Anyone else having issues with Twitch today? Every channel's giving me network errors. That's weird. Yeah, I feel young right now at the age of 35. It's funny. I feel like I was always trying to tell people how I felt like I was getting old when I was 28. And now that I'm turning 40, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like optimistic about growing into things, you know, growing into like habits and growing into like, better health and all these kinds of things. Like, instead of feeling like I'm on a downward slope, I honestly feel like I'm growing on an upward slope as I've gotten older, which I don't know if that's like normally what people feel or not. Maybe things are just working out well for me. Picked it back up after retirement. Man, I've heard that story before. It's not a bad idea. I think, you know, there's no wrong age to get into it. There's plenty of people, like, throughout art history, there's plenty of people who have, like, sort of begun their art journey fairly late in life. I've known professional artists who picked it up in their mid-30s. I've known gallery artists that started painting after retirement, after the kids are grown up. You know, part of the reason I don't get too nervous about artists who are younger than me is because I find pretty typically that artists who are younger than me are really neurotic. There's like a lot of insecurity that comes with youth that I feel like I've started to grow out of as I've gotten older. And I noticed that a lot of older artists also tend to be a lot less obsessed with like the specifics of things. They tend to be a lot more confident and like who they are and what they want out of art, and that is like there's a huge part of this whole thing. So it's like having a little bit of the confidence with age, I think, adds a lot to your ability as an artist, and like is like kind of a soft skill. It goes along with everything else. So I don't want to get too, I'm enjoying refining down all the values here, but I don't want to get too refined. I want to get the main like form turns in here and like make sure that the values are kind of where I want. And then I'm gonna do my gradient map and hard light magic. I find that that's still like with all the stuff I've been doing, like I'm getting into the gradient map and the color a little later than I typically do. But it hasn't been an issue. I've been able to like add in skin tone and like build a whole color palette, and it hasn't like gotten too weird. I haven't needed to get too specific about it. So I'm still gonna leave like it loose enough where there's like plenty to do. See, like this is where I've gone from the really blurry version to like a slightly more refined version that's got some of these harder cuts in it. Started to build up a little bit of rendering, getting a little bit more specific in spots. I want to make sure I add the light on the shoulder here. There we go. If I'm gonna be solo on the mic, I might end up actually putting music on. I know that's pretty typical. I don't know how needed it is. One of those Twitch things we're gonna have to explore one of these days. How do you learn? LGN's asking, how do you learn anatomy? You draw people over and over again. I think that I was thinking a lot about like where do you start beginner wise, and I think that one of the things that I want to teach in the course is I want to look at the classic book How to Draw the Marvel Way, because it does a really clear explanation of how the figure can be broken down geometrically in a way that's like not overly academic and like specific in its like recommendations, but like, you know, beginners have no experience breaking down a figure into geometry. And like it happens automatically for anybody who's like studied enough art. Like you always break stuff down into three-dimensional forms when you're studying art at a certain level. And if you've never done it before, like you need to be able to like do it explicitly a little bit before you start getting into other aspects. Before you start worrying about too many other like really super specific details, you need to understand the idea that like not just academically understand it, but you need to like intuitively understand the way in which a figure gets broken down geometrically. And so I don't think you necessarily need to do a ton of like geometry studies, but it couldn't hurt. And you need to spend a certain amount of time making sure that you're drawing from imagination in a way that's like three-dimensional. You're not just looking at like a curving line. You're not just looking at like a silhouette as a zigzaggy line, but understanding the actual like three-dimensional geometry of it, that you're looking at it as like it's made of polygons from the interior out. And when you have that down, then it's just a matter of figuring out what is the geometry of the different parts of the body. And a lot of that just comes from, I think, repetition, drawing from studies and trying to draw from your imagination and kind of comparing them. Bye, Sam. Take care. You spend a lot of time learning the muscles. I never learned the muscles. Like, and I don't think learning the muscles is like an essential step. Again, it's probably not bad. Yeah, just make them hot. That's probably the right choice. I think that like learning all like the names of all the muscles and stuff is like, it's not counterproductive, because it's definitely going to like give you you're going to understand the structure of like what's making up all the lumps and forms and stuff, because you're putting names to it all. But you can just sort of, I think, intuitively learn all that stuff through repetition without actually knowing where all the muscles are. And I think that it's people who are like, I think it's important to learn sort of what the thrust of all of the body parts are, not just like academically what's happening with them literally. Because people who learn in like a really heavy academic environment tend to be sort of like weaker at exaggerating the expressiveness of the body. And like, I think if you just are focused on like the body as like a vehicle for expression without really worrying about like what are the muscles and bones making it up, then like you can go back and learn all the bones and muscles. But like you need to be able to like, if you're going to draw from imagination, you need to sort of know like how to be expressive with like the form first. All right, let's add some color. I'm just going to throw on my usual here. This guy's been a mainstay for me. Not because it creates like a good literal representation of color, and I'm not going to be using this as a color palette, but you know, I might play around with it. But one of the things I really want is like there's a certain amount of minor temperature shifts that happen inside the skin tone. Skin tone isn't just lighter and darker values of the same color. There's different temperatures depending on like different things like how much blood is underneath the skin. So you get like a slightly warmer nose, slightly warmer around the eyes, things like that. Obviously the redness of the lips, inside the ear, things like that. But you also get these cooler colors that happen, you know, across the tip, like under bonier parts, like across the tip of the chin or around the eyebrow. And then also in the shadow areas. Shadows tend to be a little cooler because you tend to have kind of warm lights. And so you end up with slightly cooler shadow colors. So what I typically want out of a color palette is like, you know, you've got a highlight color. Either the highlight is going to be cool. So we have like a cool highlight here. And then we have like a kind of warm terminal where like the highlight meets the shadow, and then you've got this like more neutral shadow color, you know? And we can put that in before we start getting into the local colors on an image by using a gradient map. You can see here, like in this case, all the parts that I would be putting into shadow are getting a blue hue automatically because of where they fall on the value gradient here. You can see that this is kind of like the transition point. And so we're getting all of the shadows are naturally turning a bit cooler. So when we layer more colors on top of this with something like hard light, you know, if we put skin tone on top of this, we're going to end up with different types of skin tone where some of them are going to be cooler and some of them are going to be warmer, not just lighter and darker. And that will get us closer to where we want to go faster than if we were to just be laying on the skin tone as one singular coat, like this. So this is without the gradient map. You can see how flat that is. And then with the gradient map, you can see that we start to get some extra dimension in the color for free. And so that's what the gradient map is doing in this case. So something like this tends to work really, really well for me. But we should try out a couple other ones to see if they're doing anything cool. Like in this case, this is an inversion of it where we have a cool highlight and then a warmer shadow. And based off of what I'm seeing inside the reference image, I just do feel like it's this kind of cool, drab, very neutral tone across most of it. Like he's got a lot of redness in the face and underneath the hair where the colors of his freckles and his blush and his hair are giving a lot of warmth. And that's corresponding really closely to the colors that we're getting here from the gradient map. And then we are getting a much lighter color as we get closer to the highlights, which is maybe not entirely inaccurate. We could even go as far as to like eliminate that last gray bar and it'll go all the way to blue, all the way to the top. I might even push this up a little bit to get more of that warm tone in more places. Let's make a new one. I'm just going to like, every time I do a little innovation on a gradient map, I'm going to make a new one just so it's saved for future use. Are you putting gradient map on a mask on its own layer? No. When you make a gradient map, and you make them by going down here to this little black and white circle, this is all the adjustment layers. Gradient map is just one of them. It naturally comes with a mask included, and what I'm doing is I'm just changing its blending mode. In this case, I'm changing the blending mode to soft light so that it blends the color down in a way that's going to kind of wrap around the values in the way that I'm looking for. You can do this to create like a full-on color palette, like in a sort of almost like creating color grading. But what I'm doing here is I'm using it to kind of modulate the colors that are going to be glazed on top of it. And so you can see I'm getting warmer tones here where we're getting a lot of these freckles and stuff, and then we're getting naturally cooler tones towards the places where the light is kind of like blowing out and washed out and stuff. That's the purpose of it in this case. I've turned it down to about halfway. If it goes up all the way, I think it's starting to go too much. I think we're getting way more than we're going to want. So I'm going to turn it down to about halfway and see if that's like what we're looking for. And then even though I'm getting some amount of like color variety out of the gradient map here, I'm probably going to be brushing in the color glaze on top of it a little unevenly because I can get even more variation by being a little uneven in the way that I'm applying this, so that I can like maybe bring out some of the highlights in the hair a little bit by giving them a little. I'm doing this with my opacity turned down to about 30%, so I can add a little extra red where I want it to like bring out the lips, bring out the nose a little bit if I want. I can darken and saturate the shadow a little bit over here. And then if I wanted to, I could even like start to push that coolness in the highlight by adding in this really, really pale blue. Oh, my avatar is covering the layers. God damn it. There he is. Moved him. Sorry about that. I froze him. There we go. So I'm just kind of glazing a little bit lighter and cooler color across the whole thing. Just because as I'm kind of touching more areas of it, it's doing something visually I think is kind of interesting. And visually interesting is the name of the game here. Maybe push it back a little bit towards the orangish through here. Yeah, we don't need layers if we have VTubers, right? And again, we're getting a kind of, now that we're like in color, we're getting a kind of loose, kind of blurry look at the figure overall. And so it's, again, it's reinforcing that idea that I've been kind of pushing on for myself of like delayed gratification when it comes to knocking in the final details on all this stuff. Because like now that we have this kind of blurry, mushy, smooth, creamy looking version of the image, like then we are only in need of a little bit of additional refinement and detail to get us to a point where it feels all intentional and like play, you know, that last layer of detail and intentionality is all we need to like bring it to where it feels like it's final. It's everything besides that final detail that we need in place first. And then it's all going to be, now it's all gravy. Now it's all easy. So like with this stuff in, I'm pretty happy with how it all looks. I'm going to go and like make a layer here, and I get this resonating feeling in my chest. Oh my God, it's happening. This is the layer. This is the layer where all the detail and all the rendering happens. This is the normal layer that sits on top of everything else, where all of the parts that people actually see is going to live. And so I'm trying to pick colors from my palette that I've established on all the previous layers and all the structure that I built up to this point, and that's where I'm going to go and start to define my final edges, my final details, and that's the part that people are actually going to see But everything else that led up to it, that's the part that like enabled it. But yeah, that creamy look. Everyone likes the nice creamy look. Like there's someone on the Discord, Silight, that kept getting this really creamy look. This like more general, broad, kind of creamy look to the overall work. And I was like, damn, I want that so bad. I wonder how to do it. Is that a brush? Is there a brush I should be using that gives me that creamy look? Like, what do I need? And it was delayed gratification is what I needed. And so my final details, I have like my main brush that I'm going to use for this is going to be my default round brush for the most part, because that's where I feel like I have the greatest amount of control. And then I've got some new ones. I got this, my friend Andrea dropped a bunch of stuff on me. And so there's this one that does like blocky smudginess. Oh boy, yeah, when it's too big. And so the blocky smudgy thing can be good for like obliterating edges and adding that kind of like painterly finish to stuff. So I might take it and like do a little bit of it over the shoulder here if I want to like soften this edge up in a way that like feels like it's a bunch of like little painterly marks. I can also use it to like smooth out areas where I feel like I've got like construction lines and stuff and make it feel like it's actually made of a lot of brush strokes off of like a single mark or whatever. So I've been meaning to try out a few more custom brushes to be able to do tricks like this. And then there's also this thing, the fuzzy brush, which is just like one of those like scrapey, bristly ones. I thought it was a good one for what it was, and it would make really good for doing final details on like hair and stuff to get a little bit more texture built into the brush stroke, so I don't have to do so many like little round circle brush strokes to be able to get that same look. So get something that feels like it's got that like nice dry paintbrush edge. And I can do that too if I want to like wrap the edge of a brush stroke in a way that's going to like feel like it's like a nice natural painterly edge to it. I can get it from that instead of having to instead of having everything kind of terminate in like a round mark. So I've been meaning to maybe do a little bit of that at the end here as well, on top of like the finishing, the very precise detailed finishing I'm going to do with the round brush. Have you ever tried using mixer brushes? Those are amazing for a lot of effects. Every time I get a mixer brush inside a brush pack, it makes my computer lag, and I don't know what I'm doing wrong. I don't know if it's like my computer is out of date, or if I'm perhaps like using the brush at the wrong size or with the wrong settings, or what the fuck I'm doing. But like a mixer brush has done nothing but make my computer run bad every time I've tried it. So I need to spend some time trying it out and learning it, because I really don't know what the deal with those are. But the individual brush stroke, like that's like a really tiny difference between what I'm getting from this technique using mostly round brush and more brushy looking stuff that's being done with custom brushes. It's really just like a couple of like, it's these places where you transition from like one color to the other, instead of having it be smooth, having it be textured in some way. That can be nice to see at times, but it's not like top of my list as far as things I really care about when it comes to the look of the painting. So it's not been super high on my list as far as like making sure that that's like a practice that I'm being persistent with. All right, let me get these kind of lined up so I have a clear sense of where I am. I'm looking at things like I could see that like in my own piece, I'm seeing like a lot of variation, a lot of gradation in here, and very little over here. So I'm just purposely kind of flattening it up and then making sure that if there's a hard edge on that forehead I want to keep, I'm cutting it in nice and tight. But I want to try to do the least amount of changes from the state that I've like started on this layer in, because there's a lot of like, you know, color stuff and like larger gradients and things that I've spent all this time carefully making sure that it's in there where I want it. And I don't want to like be rethinking and redoing all that, because that work is in there for a reason and it's doing really good work for me. And so I need to trust it and make sure that I'm not overdoing this step in order to like preserve it. Take care, Summer. If you use them with the sample all layers, that could be the problem, LOL. Yeah, but that's the thing is like, because the current state of my painting is like a sort of summation of all of my layers, I always end up doing anything with like a smudge or a mixer brush with, sample all layers turned on. Because in order to use it otherwise, I would have to like flatten my layers, which is not something I feel super comfortable with from a process perspective. I really like having my layers preserved. For workflow reasons as well as like sharing reasons. I really like being able to like walk through my layers later. I've used that so often. So any tool that requires me to flatten my layers, I am going to be suspicious of it. Or I'm just going to have to get a really banging PC, one of the two. I wonder if this is a good opportunity for me to use this smudgy brush, because we've got like a lot of noise from his freckles in here. Maybe not producing. I actually have a splatter brush that I use specifically for too high contrast. Put this in and then paint over it a little bit to blend it in. We'll see if that survives. That high contrast noise details is just not something I'm super invested in. At least not yet. A Ryzen 9, 64 gigabytes RAM, decent video card. The mixer brush still lags a ton. God damn. Adobe. Wait, aren't you the Angelarium dude? I am, yes. But I am doing studies here on Twitch. So I am I'm over here like trying to level up on my art, on my painting skills. And I'm sharing everything I know along the way. So if you are interested in learning a little bit about doing painting and stuff, like, hey, you can come study along with us. We got a little bit of a community going over on the Discord. And yeah, I'm posting my reference images every single day, every weekday. And then you can do them also, and we're all gonna like kind of compare notes and take a look at each other's work. And then there's a lot of voice chat where we're sort of hanging out, chit-chatting while we work on stuff, and it's been a good group. It's been going for a couple of months now. It's been great. pretty sure I did a decent enough job earlier on because I don't feel the need to like knock too much stuff around at this point. Just swooping in saying, Yard has been one of my favorite finds on the internet the last 10 years or so. Well, thank you, Mick Max. That's been great to hear. I'm just putting these JPEGs out there and hoping for the best. Always appreciate a few kind words here and there. The unrivaled power of nice pixels placed next to each other. Yeah, it's funny, right? You think like people would figure out all the different ways you could put, 500,000 pixels in a row, but we keep finding new interesting ways to do it. Somehow it keeps getting me up in the morning. There's a certain amount of absurdity to the job of an artist that I've always really appreciated. When I didn't want to talk about what I did for a living, people asked me what I did. I told them I was a paper salesman, which is technically true. Hello, just wanted to say that I'm glad to discover your streams. You've already been something special, and these study streams gave me the motivation to pick up a tablet again and draw along. Hell yes! This is exactly what we've been hoping for. What a relief. I've been putting all these hours in streaming hoping that people would say, hey, I'm going to give this a shot again. And so you, Izao Bird, you are giving me life. You have just extended my run on making streams, and by another day at least. I am very, very excited that people have been getting stoked for making art and wanting to follow along, because it's part of the reason I'm doing studies is because this is something that anybody can pick up and do at home along with me. The study materials I have here, nothing fancy. I'm using a really basic tablet actually. I use a Intuos Pro, which despite its name is you can get for $50 or less. You can get an equivalent style tablet from Huion or XP Pen. That's what we've been giving away on Fridays. Is mostly XP Pen Deco Fun Larges, which is really, really similar to the tablet that I use, and it's $40 or $50 depending on where you live. And then I'm using Photoshop for all this stuff, but you could totally use Krita. I know some of our most popular community members are actually Krita users. And so that's free. It's really, there's very few barriers that keep people out of digital art other than the desire to avoid feeling foolish. Because a big part about learning art is making a decent amount of bad art and feeling the pain of knowing that you're making incorrect choices, that things are going slow and all those kinds of problems. And so if you can endure that discomfort, then you can you can make any kind of art that you want. It's like this. There's very, very few boundaries, and you can do it however feels good for you too. Like there's no right or wrong answers on how to make art. It's great. I think everybody should be doing it some way or another. I already joined 2 or 3 days ago. Fantastic. This is the most gratifying part about streaming. I love it. Yeah, I mean, I was wondering for a long time. I wasn't streaming, and I'm like, well, what am I going to stream for? Like, it was really tough for me to work on my mainline paintings on stream. And then, like, we started thinking about building this school and, like, trying to do more with, like, art education. And I realized that streaming had the potential to, like, bring this to people because, you do the thing. Like, instead of just talking about it, you're doing it. And it's the kind of thing we can do together. And that has really changed my perspective on, what I spend my time on. Because, like, even before I started streaming on Twitch, I was doing these dailies, and I was just like, damn, this is really fun. I'm really digging this. I'm going to keep working my way down the chin here. Got a layer of detail that's, like, kind of coming together. Still a little soft. I'm going to keep it soft, and then I'm going to, like, kind of give it another, once I've got like the whole thing feeling a little tightened down, do some little value adjustments, some little temperature adjustments, try to like carve in some shapes to make sure everything's reading exactly as it's supposed to. Once I get that one layer further in, not literally, but like kind of just artistically, one layer further down, then I'm going to have the perspective necessary to like take it to the next level of polish. This line on the chin is actually causing me a certain amount of difficulty because it's not a line. It reads like a line, but it's not. It's these series, it's like soft going along this way, and it's like it gets harder and softer as it runs along the length there. And so every time I try to stiffen it up and make it a little more linear, it starts to feel a little too linear, and then I try to soften it up and it starts to like, shrink away and become invisible again. And I'm trying to find the right balance. I'm looking over at the navigator here to make sure it still reads as the chin line and that it's not getting too wiggly. It's one of those things where like it needs to be just enough out of focus, but it reads as like a tighter line at a distance. So I'm trying to be really careful with it. I think that's kind of where I want it. Here we go. And like as the underside of the throat here kind of comes to the back of this neck muscle, kind of softens away a little bit. We get a little bit of that highlight from the neck muscle kind of peeking over there. I'm going to bring down this highlight a little bit. Just glaze it with some of this softer orange color to blend the skin tone in a little bit so that we don't have such extreme color differences. And also, like, I want to have this like feeling of it going from like warmer and darker towards the top and like lighter and cooler towards the bottom. So I'm still trying to respect that like longer gradation that we were talking about right at the beginning of the stream. Speaking about brushes, I've got 2 brushes that are a drug to me: Rakes and Soft Splatter Ari brush. Put it in the resources tab. I've been exploring brushes and like kind of adding them to my repertoire bit by bit as I've been like playing around with them, finding different uses for them. There's this little overlap of like where the highlight comes out and sticks out a little bit underneath the shadow there. It's interesting. This fold of the neck goes slightly lighter than the shoulder down here. So I need to make sure the darkest part is going to be over the top of the shoulder. And that where we get this neck fold here is going to go one step lighter. We have this like progressive stair step here where it goes like darkest on the shoulder, and then it stair steps up one to this neck fold, and then where it goes next to the Adam's apple, it gets even brighter, and then the brightest part is on the Adam's apple here. And so we need to make sure that like it goes from like here to here to here to here in a way that like creates the right value ramp. We don't want any of them to be too similar or too different from each other to get it to feel like it's like the form is turning progressively over the length of these folds. Getting that wrong is going to break the illusion very quickly. It's one of those sensitive areas that like you kind of need to pause and just be a little bit more careful at it to get it right. Whoa, 20 years seems like almost forever. Yeah, started doing art this week, first time like 20 plus years. So yeah, I didn't do any kind of art studies or whatever for the first 20 years of my art career. And it wasn't because like I thought there was something wrong about them. It was just because like, I don't know, I was like always learning as I was making my own pieces. And I never put any value in doing studies. And this year, I've just like, I started it kind of on a lark, and I've just been loving the process of making them. And so I've been digging in on it for the first time and learning why they can be really great. And so it's like, it's one of those things where I wouldn't say it's necessary for someone to do all this stuff in order to build an art career, but it certainly doesn't hurt. And if you're doing art as a hobby or whatever, art studies are like infinitely less frustrated than trying to draw from your imagination. Like, they can be a nice little vacation from the discomfort of like struggling with trying to draw like your own stuff. Like, drawing your own stuff is really satisfying, and the reason that most people get into art. But also, it's like, it's such a difficult like stack of skills to kind of balance together to do it really well, that it can be nice to just like have an image that you start and finish all in one go, and then you also like have a clear destination and where you're headed with it. It's so much more relaxing to do studies. This is the first time I've heard someone tell me that you don't need to study to be a professional artist. I was going to do a YouTube video on it this week. Yeah, I have built a 20-year career. I've become somewhat famous as an artist. And up until this last couple of months, I never did studies. I didn't do anatomy studies. I didn't do photo studies. I took a life drawing class in college. That was kind of like studies, but that was about as close as I got. I did 2 semesters of life drawing class, which I thought was really good learning. And then I've gone to like the occasional like drink and draw or whatever where there's like a life drawing model, and that's been fun. But it's not like, you know, core part. That's like after I've already been a professional artist. I have taken a weirder route through all of this stuff than the average person. Like, my career is not standard by a lot of measures, because like the not studying thing I think is one standout, but then also the fact that I kind of moved away from working with corporations and focusing on my own independent brand kind of earlier in my career before I was well known, and like built most of my reputation from being independent and owning all my own copyrights and working for myself. That has been that's also kind of strange. So being both indie and also being, well, I mean, I wonder, honestly, I think that being indie and also being kind of like weirdly lazy about study kind of go hand in hand, because it's this kind of like creating art from this deeply selfish perspective, one where it's like, I just want to do what I want to do. And like letting that be the guiding light for basically my whole art career, like makes a certain amount of sense. And I've known plenty of other artists over the years that is exactly their attitude towards this whole thing, and they also have done just fine. Being professionals, building an audience, building an income, the whole thing, it's totally doable from a perspective of just being a brat. It's allowed. Like the universe, like the world allows it, which is awesome. And so I think there's, as I get older, the more I kind of like appreciate like discipline. But like I feel like there's this great balance between like discipline and brattiness that ultimately leads to the best results. It's a very kind of Taoist, sort of perspective on the world of just like following along with what's easy and what's low effort, while also being like careful and considered in your choices. That is like the philosophy that I've kind of leveled on over the years. But it's definitely involves a certain amount of like brattiness. That is like valuable brattiness. That I'll never stop like feeling some amount of like love for that ideal. Like never stop like being like a little bit happy about how like annoyingly bratty I can be when it comes to business and creative choices and everything. It's easy. I find it's easier to study something than have internal motivation for it. If you want to learn and study something for weeb fan art, do it. Embrace the weeb energy. Let it give you strength. That's absolutely. Like, I really don't judge people based off of like the kind of art that they make, or at least I try not to. Because I mean, for some people, like them doing weeb art is like the thing that fuels them to like, fuels their whole passion. And like I really think that people following their passion artistically is so much more important than anything else. The studies give you power. I mean, you seem like you've gotten really good. You've built like some really strong fundamental skills off of doing studies and taking studying really seriously. And like I think that's totally valuable. It's just like my experience through my career was like, there's a lot to being an artist that doesn't require fundamental skills. That like you can actually get like, not only like you can get really known, you can build like a fan base, you can do all the things that like enable you to like work as an artist and never ever learn like the most basic art skills. I've seen people who have almost no fundamental art skills have like incredibly successful careers because they understand everything else. They're like that kind of like academic understanding of technique is one dimension among many in the art world. And it's like, I am personally investing in it right now, but it's like, there is a way to go through the world that requires none of it. And, I don't think it should be any less respected. But, I think that generally we sort of look at the art world from the perspective of like judging people by their technical skills. It's an easy metric to kind of measure, and things that are easy to measure tend to get like over assessment of their value, because if it's hard to measure, it's hard to value. It's like if it's just vibes, like what do you say? Like, is that really like, are we really going on like a vibes based approach? Yeah, the artist sauce is what everyone's looking for, but it's like I believe it's possible to kind of start with the artist sauce first, and like really invest in, I usually call it personal voice. Like, I think it's possible to invest in voice and style prior to learning art from an academic perspective, like technical art skills. And that is like, I've found it in my research over the last few months as I've been looking into all this stuff. There are people that will flat out tell you the first thing you do is learn all the technical skills and then you can learn your style. And I'm pretty sure they're wrong. Like, I know it is an option, but I don't think it's necessarily the best option. It's like, I don't think that learning your voice first and then learning technical skills is the right way. I think it's a personal choice. And I think that trying to pigeonhole people into one way or the other is wrong. So it's like, it's difficult to say, like the conundrum I'm in right now is I want to tell people the way that I know things, which is like, yeah, you learn your voice first and then you learn the technical skills. And I appreciate that that's not universally true, and it's definitely not common knowledge. But we live in a marketplace of ideas, not to sound like fucking Jordan Peterson or whatever, but like we live in this marketplace of ideas, and I honestly think I'm leaning towards just like telling people my own version of the truth as though it's like universal, because like people who want a different truth will just go find somebody else to listen to. And like I might just start telling people like, yeah, you should always just develop your own voice first and then go develop your technical skills the way I'm doing right here. This is actually like an aside. This is not the important thing. The important thing is like you going and like making art the way that you love and learning what it means to like be in love with your process first, then come back to this later. And like I'll understand that like a lot of people are going to say like that was wrong choice for me. And I'll be like, great, then go listen to Proco. Like go listen to somebody else who tells you to do it the other way. Like they're right too. I just like I've done this thing over the years where I've been very measured, where I try to like say things that are universally true, so everything's conditional. And I don't think that like constantly speaking in conditionals is actually that helpful to people. I think it just makes everything more complicated. So I'm just going to start telling people what I think is true, or what's been true for me, and hope that the people who they need that truth are going to find me, and everybody else can go find somebody else who works better for them. Because like, you know, like it's big internet. Like we could all go get our own version of this thing, and we could all be happy. It's like no reason to get too bent out of shape over like what's right and what's wrong when it comes to making JPEGs. They're all kind of right. I always have been. So all these little subtle value things and like bits of where the highlight is like near white and then it kind of falls off just a little bit and leaves these little highlighted pits that like show up on the and render at a distance are some of my favorite bits. So that's like exactly what I'm trying to do last here. Is to like get in here and do these things, the end of the process. And them being my favorite parts means like it's really important for me with like this sort of philosophy of delayed gratification that I get to it at the end. But honestly, I think it's probably best suited to do this stuff at the end. I'm almost done here. And even with all the talking and taking breaks for demos, I'm at about 2 hours. So that's the other thing about this sort of new, this like approach that I've been doing recently, is that I've been noticing like for these kinds of studies, it's faster. Like the less picking around and being more purposeful about everything, I'm getting these done a half hour quicker than I was before. It's like a 25% reduction in time. And I don't even think I'm that fast with it yet. I think that like if I was really good at this and I was like fully concentrated, I could probably run my way through this in an hour and get like results that it was taking me 3 hours to do before. Posted brushes I was talking about on resources. Thanks, LGN. I'm going to check those out after the stream. All right. So I think we got a lot of the body done. Um, got a couple of little marks here. I could stylize this a little bit with some smudge to like take away some of those subtleties in favor of something that feels a little more textural. Especially like through the middle of it here where it's like all very softly shaded. Is this a one layer painting? It is not. I'm just always painting on the top layer. Yeah, feel free to feed me art homies to like raid at the end of this thing. Dustin has been picking people for me more or less at random, and we've been getting a variety of people, and it's been nice to like stick around and get to know them a little bit after the raids too. So if you know any good peeps that we should get to know, like, feel free to suggest raid targets. All right, so I want to do a little bit more around the eyes to get really specific about the eyes because I was saying that's something I wanted to do at the end. I think some of the freckles might actually be like an important thing to get in here, and then a little bit of work on the hair, and I think I'm going to call that one done. Then there's like just a couple of like last minute touches that I think I'm going to end up hitting before I like fully finalize this thing. Ooh, I just noticed there's that little bit of reflection on the outer part of the eyeball there. That's like barely showing up through the JPEG compression. I think we're going to open up the eye a little bit here. Definitely add some depth to the lower lid. I'm trying to not make it too linear. I'm trying to find where I can kind of like make some areas darker and some lighter and get it to express the right way. Here, my kid's homesick today. I'm hearing him get yelled at in the other room. All right, cool. Mako Vice is a solid choice, but I don't think they have a mic. Oh, that's weird to be streaming on Twitch with no mic. I mean, I guess it's an option if you just wanted to have somebody on who's painting along with you, and if they've got some chill music, could be good. Yeah, one of the things I'm noticing in a lot of cases is like I'm looking for these edges, but the edges on everything when you get up close enough are not quite as tight as like I feel like I'm always trying to push myself to make like these really fine edges at the end, but everything's always just a little bit softer than I like want to paint it. Like the reality is always a little bit softer focused than what I'm really doing. And so I'm trying to like just even as I get in for these final like tighter touches, just push some of those around a little bit, just mush them up a little bit to try to like give a greater sense of realism, believability. think I could go and actually do exactly what I'm saying here. Mush this up a little bit more, especially on the lower lid. It's looking a little bit too much like eyeliner. I wonder if maybe rather than something that is like dots, something that's more like these sponge marks might do better to express these freckles a little better. Get some of these like really warmer reds in there. Really bright oranges. Because it's the texture of it, not the individual dots that I care about. At the size of the Navigator, it looks very good. Thank you. Yeah, I'm telling you, like, I feel like I've turned a corner in my studies recently. I've been pretty happy with the outcomes from the ones over the weekend, and then like I'm hoping that at the end of this, I'm gonna feel the same way about this one as well. It's I feel like I'm just like finally learning a process that gets me all the way through it in a way that like gets me the results that I want and like feels like I have artistic control and not just I'm not just hanging on by my fingertips. I should remove the zoom button from my keyboard. I use zoom by just holding Alt and Control next while I'm holding spacebar. But yeah, trying to be like diligent about when I'm zooming and why has been a big part of this also. Like you can't just live inside of the zoomed in details. I feel like I should have done this step as a separate layer because it's like it's running the risk of looking like uncontrolled and splotchy. I mean, anything that looks splotchy, I can go through and just erase it down to the previous step. Shouldn't be too bad. I'm looking at the Navigator for where it might be working or not working. All right, and then I want to try out this scrapey brush for the hair, because the hair I've been leaving as like just been doing it with round brush, and just like leaving it be a little blurrier, and then picking out a few marks. But I think, oh wait, this is scrapey. Scrapey is different than fuzzy. Scrapey is set to multiply mode, so when you pull it back. So, okay, so I'm going to start a new layer here so I can mess with this a little bit. Scrapey is a tool that, like, it's on multiply mode, so when you start on a fresh layer, it gives you these, like, you know, these stalks, and then when you go over it again, it darkens itself. Like, anywhere that's touching that's new was going to lighten, then anywhere it goes back over itself, it darkens. And so what it's doing is it's creating these streaks that are, this was really good for when I was doing, like, plants. And I was like, okay, well, I want the plants to feel like they have shadows between them and some dimension to the stalks, but I don't want to go in and manually define like the shadow and the highlight for every individual blade of grass. And I thought this was really good because it creates these like kind of shadow shapes that run along with the direction of the highlights naturally as a feature. This was in Ash's brush set, by the way. So if you're looking for this, it's in the Ash's brush set that's available on the resources channel on Discord. So like it's got these bigger marks that I kind of like for being able to make these like collections of flyaway hairs, these larger poof collections. And then it tends to darken itself in a way that like if you scrape back over it, it's going to create these like natural shadows running the same way. So it might be good for something like hair. I'm not entirely sure. It's a very specialty tool that I'm like not planning on using as part of my regular rotation because it's like its behavior is like pretty peculiar. So it's like more like a special effects brush. The way I think I'm going to use it. And then it was the fuzzy brush I was thinking about using for this stuff. I wonder if maybe I should break it up a little bit with my round brush and then I finish it with the fuzziness. Because trying to go in and render with all this all the time is probably going to leave too small of a mark, too high noise. So maybe I'll do a little bit of the scrapey to get some bigger chunks to fly away here. Like this. Pretty good. Sort of larger flyaways. Yeah, kind of wrapping around, all running parallel. Not bad. When you press soft, it actually does something kind of nice. Like the pressure jitter on this, it feels pretty intuitive. And then I'm going to go in with a round brush and define a few key areas in a way that's like going to style it a little bit, and then I'm going to try to finish it with a little bit of that fuzzy brush to see if I can get like the sense of like a loose brush stroke. This is new. This is new experimentation happening. The amount of hair on the previous studies that I've done has been a little bit more minimal and like way more accepting of just being these kind of soft, blurry masses, which I thought was a cool style. So I was perfectly happy doing it. But this guy has so much hair and it's like so swoopy and styled that I feel like I maybe need to go into studying like how I'm going to potentially do a bit more involved haircut. In a way that feels like brushy and styled and like loose. Especially if it's going to be fast and efficient to do it. Yeah, fuzzy, scrapey, dopey, lazy, and asshole. The 8th dwarf that nobody likes talking about. Back in my D&D group when I was a lot younger, there was a guy who I'm not sure if everyone knew it or not, but everyone called him Sphincter because he was like a huge asshole. And everyone I knew him as Sphincter, but no one ever said it in front of him. That was bad. Looking back on it, that would be a pretty bad dwarf name. Guy's hair is too fabulous not to give proper care and attention. It would be a crime, a fashion crime. RuPaul would come to my door and beat the shit out of me. I'd be disinvited from the gay wedding I'm going to next year. One of the other things I want to do with the hair also is like a classic for me is to do lost edges and like long stretches where it's like not a particularly soft edge, and so I don't really want to carve an edge, is like just begging to just get turned into like pureed into pure mush, because those lost edges provide a lot of like free style points, and also they're really, really easy to make, which means that you don't need to solve a lot of what's inside of them. I love it. The reason I use like these lost edges is because they are 100% free style points that I am always willing to collect on. And you know, we already have a little bit of a lost edge over here. We can probably pump that up a bit. It's like one of our final finishing touches, and we're doing it a little bit here too. Trying it with that smudgy brush. I don't know. Smudgy might not make the cut, you guys. Been a little annoying. There are places across the profile where I wonder if maybe we should let the edge go a little bit. Might get some value out of that. There's a lot of really soft transitions and shapes happening in here that I feel like I've just started to notice. I don't know why I was like so focused on the final strands all the time. There's getting all those big soft like shapes like worked out earlier. It does so much as far as like establishing the overall look and volume, and it's so much easier. It's almost free to just go in and like make a few big, like swoopy, round, smooth shapes that blend into each other. Yeah, these larger chunks are feeling at first like I felt like they were freebies because they were like really quickly emulating like the high contrast highlights inside of the hair, but then as I'm looking to blend them, they're kind of begging to be individually blended as opposed to like being treated as part of a larger mass, and that is making me hate them almost immediately. So I am going to see what I can do about working around those a little bit, or not work around them, but just sort of knock them down, take them out. And then I'll bring in some higher contrast, tighter detail later in the process. And I'm going to bring in some of these oranges that I was adding as like highlights for the skin tone into the hair, because I feel like there's these orangier notes, and everything kind of got a little bit on the maroon side for the hair. I think it's going to look more natural, more lit. Having it's lit and it's going to be fire. Bringing in some of this orange in here. Unify some of that color palette. Oh, thank you so much, Ordo Philosophicus, for the Prime sub. Really appreciate it. Yeah, it's funny how softening a few edges here or there can like really change the overall impression of an image. It's all about relativity. You know, you think you want things to look sharp, so you go and you sharpen everything up, and then they're all kind of competing with each other. It's this process of being selective and kind of gardening where the edges are going to be, gardening where the highlights are going to be, like being really, really picky about all that. That ultimately leads to the results that I think we're looking for. Man, this kid's hair is so fucking swoopy. It's driving me crazy. Making me second guess every single little choice I'm making in here. Fuck this kid's swoopy hair. Yeah, next time I think I'm gonna, once I have like the softer shaded, I'm gonna go into it more with just the round brush first to get these like medium-sized subdivisions done, and then I'm gonna go in with the smaller textured brushes and stuff. Definitely got that out of order. Next time I get some dumb kid with some swoopy hair, I'm going to start sort of medium-sized with the round brush. Some dumbass punk kid. I bet he plays Fortnite. I want to like, it's like the hair's kind of twisting around and underneath over here. I want that sense that it's like, that this mass is not going all the way into this. Like I don't want it to feel like it's going like this. Because it's going kind of like down and over here, and then there's this other bit that's coming out like this. Art hack, just draw bald people to avoid hair. I mean, yeah. Or like this has been my hack for a long time. Don't make characters with faces and then you don't need to learn facial anatomy. Like one of the fun things about this recent study trip that I've been on is like I feel like I didn't have a lot of evidence to like I could tell people before, oh yeah, I know how to draw faces. I just didn't have any proof of it. And now I feel like I've finally got proof. Like, oh yeah, I could draw faces. Yeah. Oh, faces, I just choose not to draw them. It's not because I'm specifically struggling with them. That's not the reason there's no faces in these paintings. No. I could absolutely draw an amazing face right now, but my hand I've just been working a little hard, you know, and my shoulders, little this. Maybe, get back to me in a couple of days. I'll be able to take care of it. No problem. No problem. Easy, easy, easy. Yeah. Okay. This kid's swoopy hair is coming together, getting close. Fortnite hair. See, these are these larger gradations I'm talking about. I'm typically going over the top of details to get them in later that I've been trying to get in earlier in the process. But I kind of lost my way on this one. Now I need to like kind of back it out and then back it in a little bit. Kind of doing like a weird parking job on the values here. But I think that's pretty good. He's got some hairs that are kind of going over the ear here. It's all kind of softening behind the back of the ear. Same over here a little bit. And then there's places where it's like semi-translucent as like the strands are getting further apart. So I can de-helmetify this a little bit by just softening some of these edges a little bit before I get into the final details. There we go. And then now we just need to do some final detail work up on top of it here, and then we're basically done. So I'm going to use this. Wait, was that scrapey? Fuzzy. Extremely detailed human with Play-Doh hair is an interesting design, LOL. Yeah, I mean, it is, right? It's like, you're like, oh, this is what my art is supposed to look like. So like it's got this bit of like a textured scrapey look. I just want to catch like some of the highlights with it because that'll leave this like extra bit of fine noise that's going to infer detail while also be like placed very intentionally. So intentional marks with a little suggestion of additional detail through noise is like what I'm aiming for. We'll see if it actually lands. Trying to pull that off is something I don't actually aspire for that often. I typically just try to go and do all the detail instead of actually making these more subtle suggestions. This is something I want to be able to do more often when I want to. Funny, whatever was happening with the gradient maps before left some of those hair strands looking blue. And yeah, this is just about where I need it, I think. And I'm a little over time. I was aiming for 2 hours. But yeah, we're doing some demos midstream. Leave it there. All right, finishing touches. A couple of things I want to do. Number one, I'm going to save it because I think this window's crashing. All the extra time was for answering chat. That's all right. Yeah, this seems to have frozen, so let's close it and reopen it, as is the way of working in Photoshop CC. Okay. I feel like I went too high contrast on like the eyebrows and the eye a little bit here. So So I'm just going to bring that down a little bit. Soften it up so that it feels a little bit more in line with the impression of the reference. Same thing with the bottom lip. Now that I'm reading it again, it's like coming in a little hard. That's better. Shape of the chin got a little malformed. There we go. And then I have this. I'm doing this thing where I go in for like a soft light layer at the end, just sponging in something soft, just to like give it a little bit of extra, something, just a little bit of extra like background texture to have it feel a little bit more complete and lit. There we are. And you can see there's actually a subtle lighting on the background as well. And so I'm just kind of trying to bring that same feeling out, that same vibe over here. And I think it places the figure in the scene a little bit more. And I can also do a little bit of final lighting adjustment by grading the lighting just a little bit at the end. So that adds a little bit more volume to both the figure as well as the background, I think. So that's been like my final little adjustment. And yeah, that's my current process for doing these studies. I wonder if maybe I should do a little bit of extra sprinkle of texture on the face for the freckles. I'm bringing it down a little bit. With these soft light layers, sometimes I feel like I'm enjoying it, and then I may be enjoying it a little too much. There we go. Calling it. The other thing I could do if I really wanted to do some tweaks, I could also do a little bit of color adjustment at the end. Sometimes these add a little something. I feel like I really don't want to overdo it. But I always find it's fun to explore just a little bit before calling it. Nah. If I was taking a bolder swing at the color, I might do something weird like this. I wonder if it masks well, though. Give it a little bit of cooler tones on the perimeter. Well, it gets warmer towards the face. That's kind of a cool look. Also invert that. I might stick with that. All right. Hey Nelson, how's it going, man? You still don't get how I go from grayscale to color? Yeah, I keep doing it every day, and it keeps working. Oh, the other thing I can do at the very last minute here is I can also do a little bit of a level adjust. Sometimes this is not too bad to bring out the full range of value a little bit. Just tweak the contrast a bit. Sometimes I feel like I don't get enough of this when I'm seeing this on the second monitor. The problem I keep running into is I will save it out and then I will go and post it on Discord, and Discord will be on a different monitor, and I'll go, ooh, and I'll like, when I see the thing on the other monitor, I'll go and tweak it at the very last second, and then I will like repost it. There are some minor adjustments I want to make, but I'm going to call it. It's a study. I'm not going to be putting these in a gallery. I'm going to be back tomorrow to do better every day. So yeah, we gotta raid somebody. I think that's the next order of business here. Finish studies 65. Aren't you only doing 3 days a week? That's true. This week I'm going to be doing only 3 days this week because I'm going to be spending Tuesday and Thursday trying to make videos for the YouTube channel. It's an experiment. If it turns out I still can't make videos for the YouTube channel, I am going to probably go back to 5 days a week and then figure out something else that's going to make it work. There was a suggestion for somebody we should raid, one of Picat's friends. Picat? Steve something? Steve Sketches. Here we are. Did we do Steve Sketches before? I feel like I recognize the name. I'm just like, it's just dawning on me now. Not 100% sure? All right, well, we're going to do it anyway. Let's raid Steve Sketches. It's just suddenly like ringing a bell. I think they're getting raided by somebody else as well. All right, thanks everybody for joining me. I will see you on the other side. Be back on Wednesday. Goodbye.